Hello everyone, I'm Jenny Campbell. I'm the Chief Exec of the Resilience Engine.
And I'm Alison Kane. I'm the Programmes Director for the Resilience Engine.
And we are absolutely thrilled to offer you our learning on taking programs and putting them into a virtual space. So during COVID 2020, we've had to obviously go, as everyone else has, fully virtual. We have been coming in from a blended sort of way of working, often face-to-face with some online materials. And actually, we've gone fully virtual, and we're really chuffed with ourselves and with our program participants because it's working out so well. So the kind of things that we are seeing in the Resilience Engine work that we're doing right now, and we'll explain specifically where our lessons come from in a minute, but we are seeing basically really high impact learning. So much stickier, much more in depth, much more real questioning. And the other thing is real engagement, which is kind of coincidental with that. Is it sits, it's not coincidental. It sits hand in hand with that. So people are taking responsibility for their own learning. They're driving their own learning. We're very, very much part and parcel of responding, whilst holding, if you like, a curriculum or a set of things that we're aiming to, a set of outcomes that we're aiming to achieve within anything of the work that we do. So we're pretty excited about that, and we thought it might be useful to share in this short video, which is informal between us. So please don't expect a polished sort of performance. But we can actually at least share with you in the spirit of abundance and generosity in this time. So we hope it's helpful. If you do want to get in touch with us, normally we would put up our own personal, our own Resilience Engine emails. But during COVID, we have a bit of a policy that we use our generic emails at the moment, just so anyone in the team can cover in case anything happens to one of us, or, we're just not available. So do get in contact at info@resilienceengine.com. And obviously, if you want to see what we're talking about in terms of our services and what we're doing, just go into our website. We've got a special COVID page there. So let's go. Let's tell you who we are.
So just for those of you who don't already know us, we're the Resilience Engine, and we've been researching into resilience since 2007. Our mission is to bring resilience for everyone. And the research that we've been doing shows that what we believe in is that everyone deserves to perform well without compromising their well-being. And that combination of performance and well-being is what resilience delivers. We've been putting our research into the hands of our clients, and our research, our tools and our content, so that organisations can support all staff from individuals right through to their leaders. And we do this through offering our online learning content and support.
So traditionally, just to be clear on it, we've had blended programs and face-to-face programs. We come from a coaching background, which is highly relational, and typically we would be operating quite strongly in the face-to-face, and now we've gone fully virtual. So if we go on and explain onto the next one, Alison, and explain just where our learning comes from. So just in this last period, number one, we deliver an accreditation program that is to organizational development professionals and coaches. It can include other people with a coaching approach in their managerial style. We've got people from education and social services in the academic institutions as part of our community. And it's an 8-month blended program normally, okay? But it includes normally face-to-face workshops, and we have taken that into a virtual space. The other thing that we do workshops. We've been doing things with the pharmaceutical industry and charities. We've been training other coaches in specialist support through our COVID support colleagues around the whole of the country. And we've also been running resilience debates. This was set up originally as a book launch. We have a book available, you can see it from our website, but actually we turned these into real debates. And you see some of our kind of online photos here. So for example, the maximum number we've had on is 50 at any one time. Our accreditation program operates much in a smaller space. It's probably about 15. So the lessons we are going to share from you around that impact come from these specifically. So they are taken from very, very recent work. And we have 6 key points that we want to share with you.
Yeah, so these are the 6 sort of headings that encompass our key learnings that Jenny and I have been sort of discussing recently about our learning from delivering our content virtually. The first one we decided was really around the real importance of trusting the process. And that's trusting obviously the process of delivering what you're delivering, which you've already done, therefore you've built that trust in that, but also the trust in the virtual process. So we know that some of the people coming onto calls virtually will already have experienced virtual learning, and therefore they will either be beginning to or already have developed that trust in the process, but there will be other people who don't necessarily have that trust in the process. So it's really important for us as facilitators to trust the process and convey our confidence and positivity towards that. So one of the things I was noticing as we were bringing this out into our communities was to make sure that we weren't sort of going through the words of saying things like, you know, well, if we were in a room right now, this is what we'd be doing. So not making those comparisons, but really speaking to the power of virtual learning and the interactivity and the power that it can bring to people. Because we know that once people get familiar with the tech and practice engaging, that actually they also trust the process.
I mean, and you know, I think we were new to that. We already did blended working, and I think people should know on this video that we do use a combination of Zoom and Slack, for example, in our accreditation program. So we'd already set up virtual working groups on some tasks related to the program itself. So we were encouraging and inviting, and almost sort of, you know, it wasn't an absolute must-have, but we were really strongly encouraging people to connect in virtually via Slack. Now that isn't over this kind of means of Zoom and video, but it did mean that people sort of were starting to build up a relationship on Slack itself. But I would say one of the things for us is that it's come about quite quickly that almost within a session, you know, and we use breakout rooms a lot, with that kind of idea of really enabling, I mean, this is part of our resilience thing, but if you enable people to connect with the resilience rather than just talking about it, then you can bypass a lot of the resistance, the neuroscience and etc. sort of shows this. And so you're helping people really connect with resilience. And I think we've taken that philosophy into virtual working, so much so that, you know, when we first were doing it, you know, creating breakout rooms, etc., and we were left in the main session kind of going, well, what do we do now? You know, twiddle the thumbs, not quite sure what to do. But actually, sort of 10, 15 minutes, however long they were in the breakout rooms, they come back and the engagement is just massive. You know, so all of a sudden we're really serving them well to give them, you know, a sort of trustworthy process. And I think that's really been at the heart of all the other parts, actually. You know, probably 1 and 2 here for me are probably the biggest pieces, is very, very clear structure, but also this trust in the process. So should we go on to structure? Is there anything else we want to say under trust the process?
No, I don't think so, no.
Yeah. I mean, so I think in structure, I mean, this is super important in any kind of delivery of any training, any workshops, any masterclass or whatever. You know, there's the old thing of you've got to say what you're going to say. You're going to have to say it. And then at the end, you got to say what you have said. you know. And I think that for me has always been my mantra, you know. Make sure people know where they are, actually in the middle of it signpost them to where they are, and then at the end tell them what they have, you know, they've just been hearing or experiencing. So I think that, you know, that mantra should still be there. But also there is a thing about so structuring the session, how many things are in it, the clarity of the timing, absolute clarity of the timing, making sure that people really understand instructions for breakout rooms, absolutely giving them heads up, you know, via broadcast message, etc., how long they've got, what they are, knowing that they can come back and put a hand up and ask you for help, popping into breakout rooms and seeing how they're doing. All of that kind of thing helps ensure that they have a structure around time, they have a structure around task, they have a structure around freedom, you know. There's a structure around Q&A. There's a structure about breaks, all of that kind of thing. And so it's the time and the space, the task, actually almost gives the baseline then for the freedom in which they can actually operate. And they don't get in a muddle. And if you get in a muddle in virtual working, that can take quite a long time to unpick. So the more you know, especially with a bigger group, so the more you're clear, the better. So.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think in some ways it feels like the virtual thing is more structured, and yet people actually do need more structure within that. You know, whereas in the room, I think there may be something about feeling that you can't just sort of, you can of course, but there's a sense that you can't just sort of ask or sense what's going on as well. So you need to be really clear about what's going to happen. And having a very clear agenda and revisiting that and just reminding people what's coming up all the time so that you've got something very clear to go back to, I think is really, really important. And one of the other things we talked about, Jenny, was having one learning outcome per session, being, you know, having very clear learning outcomes so that everything is structured around that as well, for everybody to aid that clarity.
And I mean, and you know, we're going to give a sort of few top tips at the end here, but one of the things is, say, a 60-minute or 90-minute session max. So I do hear about other communities being online for sort of 2 to 3 hours, and the requirement for focus on virtual is much higher. It's much harder. You know, you have to concentrate more. You're listening and you're watching, but you're not moving around. There's not that kind of flux of energy up and down unless you are creating it as a facilitator and as a co-creatively with your participants. So I think, you know, that kind of length of session. I would say as well, there's a different sort of structure if you have a programmatic and you have to have content, if you like, an understanding of content, versus more a debate or even a masterclass, or, you know, I think that's really different. So there's a minimum kind of level of content we needed for the accreditation program, but for other things, we've been much more led by, you know, those who are participating. And so part of what I really enjoyed, you know, whilst we might give in breakout rooms a bit of a kind of task or a question that they might actually go off and do, what people have done is just what they need to do at the time. Right. And as long as they're kind of in the work in some form or other, actually they're coming back with much more pertinent questions because they're right on the thing that matters to them. And they're not trying to play lip service, if you like, to the facilitator's instructions. And I find that really refreshing because we've kind of got much deeper into the work much more quickly. I don't know, you know, even with the accreditation program, I think, you know, there's a lot of content involved in what they need to know, but somehow or other, because maybe it is because of that focus that they've been able to really arrive into it in a way that is just much more, and it's just much deeper than they would do normally in a face-to-face workshop. It's just really amazing. Maybe there's less distraction, I don't know, but certainly anyway, that structure has been absolutely critical. So yeah, fairly short sessions. We've done things like taken one day and split it across 4 times 90 minutes, but in different days. So, you know, a Monday morning, a Tuesday morning, a Wednesday morning, a Thursday morning. And that build across time has really allowed a completely different level of engagement. Same with the accreditation program, taking one day and splitting it into, 2 days, each with the 2 times 90 minutes, as it were. And then there's quite a lot of things behind the scenes. I think that's the other thing behind structure is clarity of materials,
Mm-hmm.
and always following up. Where are we? What have we done? What else is left to do? So we've left in the accreditation program people quite up to themselves to follow through, say on buddying, where they've been co-coaching one another. We've just left them to, they've had 5 minutes with us. You don't have to imitate more than that. What you would do in a workshop situation, they'd maybe going off for 20 minutes or something, but actually we can do 5 minutes online and then leave them to do that later on in the day by themselves, and we don't need to be involved. And that means they can move about and be more well as they're working together, So I think that's been quite helpful as well, the structure of materials.
Mm. I think that leads us nicely into create space, because I think that piece around creating space for people to work outside the sessions is part of that space creation. But inside the sessions, when you're working as a facilitator and you've only got 90 minutes, there is the potential to really drive through the content. So it's really important to step back and create that space for the participants and for yourselves as facilitators as well. So one of the advantages of the breakout rooms is you do get that space to have a little chat and say how are things going, how are we pacing this, what's going on. But it's really creating that space for people to have the time to reflect and digest. So the breakout rooms are great for that, allowing people to go away and talk to each other in pairs or small groups to chat about something, develop their ideas. But there's also something just about pausing as well in the delivery. So even if it's something as simple as checking what's going on in the chat room, you don't have to sort of feel you've got to do that in the background. You can actually say, I'm just going to have a little look in the chat room, see what people are saying. It respects their engagement at the same time as also creating that bit of space and pause in the process. So building in those pauses and spaces, keeping it light and fun. That's also about creating the space, and always being ready to drop something rather than squeeze in, the content. So as Jenny was speaking to earlier, if there's something coming out that the group are bringing in and that's worthy of discussion, it's maybe talking to them about that and creating space for that in the agenda.
So there's a couple of other things as well I would say that we have done. In fact, I've forgotten in the earlier slide that another part of our learning comes from our community coffee mornings. So we're having bi-weekly coffee mornings. And I think there's 2 or 3 things you can do to create space in different ways. Number one is checking in. So we use the Resilience River as a really nice check-in. And I think that's very helpful. And by the way, if you're watching this, you want to know, go onto our YouTube channel. It's on there. But it's a very simple way of checking in about how is your Resilience River today. And that's a really helpful thing to do. There's a couple of other things, and I think we've done this really well, and we've held our own space, is we've created mindful moments, where we've just been breathing, or we've been doing body scans. Now, this is part of the resilience work, but what it's allowed people to do is leave the busyness of where they've come from and just arrive together, and so the felt presence, the somatic experience of that, I think, has been very strong for participants, And the other thing is the creation of space in the body. So, we haven't always been sitting about the place. So, we have got up and we've moved about, we've stretched, we've done stuff like this. It's been a bit fun. I mean, I'm a bit of a dafty. So, I don't mind doing these things. I think at one point, my belly was on show at one point, not so fun for those who, if they were watching. But actually, that sort of ability to notice that you can really connect by stretching, or, you know, playing Tarzan if you want to kind of get more energy in the body or whatever. All of that is entirely available to you in a virtual way as well. And the ease in which you can do that actually allows everybody just to be a bit daft too, and that's quite fun. So so yeah, creating space, I think, is really important. Next one about agency, I think, is just, I don't know, it's hard to say. I mean, I've said that number 1 and 2 are the most important, but actually they're all so critical. I mean, I think this in everything of what we do in resilience is enabling somebody to, I mean, I think this is our fundamental role as trainers, facilitators, whatever, is to help them hold the cup of responsibility, right? And actually a lot of that is getting out of the way. You know, it's actually removing yourself and creating that space for them to fill their own space and learn their own voice and connect with their own voice. And I just think it's so powerful, you know. So you know, as a philosophy, we have it as a company, as a training mechanism. You know, it is absolutely critical in all education. It's, you know, if you look at the theories of education or whatever, the practice of it is actually quite specific in your structure. It comes through in your structure, but it also comes through in you as a facilitator and your intention to be equal to the participants and not be the Mr. and Mrs. Guru at the front.
Yeah, and I think there's something interesting around that in terms of the virtual space. And I don't really know what it is about it, but there's something about equality of presence. So as facilitators, there's almost a different way that you're present in the group. Now, obviously, people can have you on speaker view, so you're the big, you're the big face on the screen. But also in gallery view, you take the same space as everybody else. So there's something interesting around that.
It's interesting. I hadn't thought about that sort of a kind of visual representation, all being equal. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a really interesting thing to do with agency and power. You know, and we are experts in our field, and we are training people who are apprentices, if you like. And yet what we know within our work is that their resilience is their resilience, and they are experts in their own resilience, and we are not. So the best way we can serve them is to help them connect with that. You know, and as coaches, to connect with their power as coaches, to be able to enable their client. So I think that doesn't necessarily negate your own voice or your own power. No. You know, but you can just hold it much more lightly. So I don't know how much of this is resilience dependent. You know, so if you're a trainer and you're not coping very well with what's going on right now, actually you probably sort of consider increasing your resilience in order to then be able to share more evenly and equally and easily. I think that's probably part of that. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's a bit profound for this video, but, you know, but we can definitely say, make sure that, you know, you're not the gobby one, and that, you know, she says as she's being very gobby about it. And actually ensure that the action is with them. So make sure that the conversation is amongst the participants and not being a hub and spoke into you as the facilitator. And that's really at the core of sort of some of this great virtual learning. And I do think it leads directly into engagement.
Yeah, and engagement, we've talked in a number of the other sort of headings about things that are relevant for engagement. I think the check-in thing that you were talking about, Jenny, is really important. And initially, particularly if it's first off where people don't know each other, is really about creating the space. So we're talking about creating space again, but creating the space and time for that. So in your structure, you need to make sure that you've got a good lump of time at the beginning just to get people to land and to introduce you to each other and to feel that they're together in something. So I think that's really important. And
I mean, just one point of that, I think that depends on your outcome. So in the resilience debates, we didn't do that with 50 people.
Yeah. No.
We couldn't
I'm talking
do all
about
that.
workshop
Exactly.
situations.
But even in the workshops, it's possible to trust that they will do within their smaller groups, that somehow or other that is there. So there's an equality of presence expected. Mm-hmm. Almost in your positioning up front, and somehow or other, because of that, it's again back to structure. So if you've created the structure and you're introducing that it's going to be about everybody, just debating and choosing and, following their gut and knowing, diving into certain subjects that are really interesting for them, then if that is the sort of invitation, it almost sets that equality up from the beginning. Mm-hmm. Even if you're not doing that check-in at the
Yeah, I was thinking of the workshop, like the resilience accreditation program, where people are going to be working together, sort of on a long-term basis. Yes. So I guess that's slightly different. But even with that, we found, on subsequent sessions, it's a very quick check-in, like a few seconds, how thumbs up, thumbs down, or whatever it might be, for people just to land really, and then maybe do something like you were saying, that's something in terms of a mindful moment or something to also help that. In terms of number of facilitators and engagement, ideally, and we know this isn't always possible, but ideally to have 2 of you, because it gives that change in pace, change in tone, but also an extra pair of eyes. So just to watch what's going on in the chat, watch what's going on in people's videos, just so you get keeping a sense of that can be fed back into the process. And in terms of engagement, obviously it's a lot about interactivity, so not just talking at people or delivering slides, even if they're beautiful slides. It's about helping people to really engage, so keeping that interactivity level up. And you'll see one of our top tips is about having a minimum of 50% of interactivity, whatever form that might take. So in Zoom, for example, we use breakout rooms a lot, we use the whiteboard, we use polls, whatever's appropriate for that situation. And in fact, we've even used hands up in a game that we ran in our accreditation program, where it was a binary question, so everybody could see who had answered yes and who not yes or no, or one choice or another choice, and that enables us to play a game that we would normally play in a room. So it's being creative as well about how you can use some of these tools to really build in that interactivity. And I think we were really pleasantly surprised at how well that worked.
Oh, it was fab. Yeah. It's just fab, and it's fun, and it's funny. Yeah. and it takes away, it's back to this agency, it takes away the action between the knowledgeable one versus the participants into something which is much more just a game, and it's equal, and it's quite drama oriented. If anyone's watching this, it come from a drama background, so where you really got a lot of movement and what have you. So similar sort of ideas. So yeah, and then the very last one, I mean, at the end of the day, we have felt and we have noticed our trust in ourselves building. So we've only kind of 1 month or 6 weeks into this, doing everything virtually. And it was a tipping point, I think, for each of us, wasn't there? If we would kind of went, you know what, this is unbelievable. I mean, the first thing that we did in the accreditation program, we were like, wow. I mean, in the conversations in Slack afterwards, the questioning's coming back in, the desire and the drive to go out and do this with clients immediately, the cross connections, it's just phenomenal. It's like, agency gone woo, it's just really great. And so actually being able to see the evidence is important, but actually acting on that evidence as soon as you can, and so really trusting that you are offering something decent, that you, you know, it's okay to make mistakes. If you're slightly faffy, it doesn't matter. You know, it's to be authentic really is the core here, and to respect your plan, which I'm currently not doing because I'm being gobby again. Anything else you should say about trust yourself?
I think there's that piece for me anyways, and I think we'll probably talked about it already, but it's getting in the zone myself beforehand. So really taking that time, which we do obviously in face-to-face, but there's something about virtual of, particularly if you're working from home, as a lot of us are at the moment, of moving yourself into a different space in your body. So whether that's breathing or doing some stretching or whatever it is that each of us does to just land ourselves and be present and be ready to be authentic and vulnerable with you know, whatever that means with our with the people that we're going to be working with.
Yeah, it's lovely. Good. So that's our top 6 kind of key learnings, and then we've got some top tips for you that come out from that.
Yes.
And I don't know if we need to run these through, Alison, but rather maybe point out some of the bits that we haven't mentioned.
Yeah,
clarify.
So I think that's pretty obvious. The first one, practice run and self-prep, we've talked to. Tech checks with participants. So obviously potentially you're going to have people at different levels. So it's really offering that, I think, before you kick off, if it's a program. Obviously, if it's a one-off webinar, that's a bit different. But if it's a program, offering that so people can come in feeling a little bit confident already about that this is going to be okay for them. So, you know, making sure they understand the basics of what they need to know in order to use all the different bits or functions that you're going to be using, whichever tool you're using. So in our case, it's been Zoom. So just helping them make sure they can get in, they know how to mute, unmute, all those basic things, they know what breakout rooms are, whatever you're going to be using, they're just familiar with that.
So I've done that, for example, right at the beginning on the resilience debates. I didn't know who was coming in, I didn't know them, and I just by rote actually just did some simple, you know, turn your video on, off, mute yourself on, off, breakout rooms, this is what it's like. And the breakout rooms, I didn't do that in the resilience debates, but we did initially so that people would understand how they worked. And there are differences, you know, depending upon the technology you use with Macs and PCs, etc. So you've just got to become aware of these things. Anything else from that? I mean, the things that stand out for me are the 15 and the 50, really. Everything else is, you know.
Yeah. So what in our experience, number of participants plus facilitators. So this again would be for a workshop situation where you're expecting interactivity. Our ideal is 15. That's on the basis that you get on Zoom, at least you get 3 rows of 5 videos across your screen. They're a reasonable size. You can keep in contact with people. You can see what's going on in each of those videos. And so obviously depending on the number of facilitators you have, that's going to be a sort of 2 + 13 or a 1 + 14 idea.
So I think that's exactly right. If you want to ensure in-depth kind of, if you've got a long-term program, or you know you've got this kind of, say you've split a one-day workshop into 4 90-minute sessions or whatever, I think that number is fine. It was unbelievably successful to go for a higher number, but I wasn't trying to take care of everybody. And that's the difference. So I was really asking them to come in and take care of themselves and what they were interested in within the debates itself. And then this minimum 50% interactivity, Alison's already mentioned. I mean, if higher it's possible, it would be good. So, you know, push the action away from yourself and make sure it's 50% away. So you've got a maximum of 50% yourself. And that brings you back to one message or one main outcome per session. Don't make it more, because otherwise the action will all be with you. Yeah. So we hope that that's actually brilliant. I think there's one last little one. Alison, if you just, there's a...
Oh, yes, I almost forgot that one. There's two actually, Jenny. Yeah, and I put them on, I always forgotten. So yeah, so simple things. Sometimes the simple things make a big difference. So having a glass of water to hand, if you're a facilitator, really important. So just in case you get a bit dry or a bit tickly. So that's that one. And then the other one is, do you want to speak to that one, Jenny?
Just make sure you're stretching out. Yeah. You know, just make sure you're encouraging really good virtual working well-being processes. So, you know, ensuring back of the seat, shoulders back, you don't have that kind of, you know, pigeon neck, and all the rest of it. Yeah. So if you're noticing somebody like that or whatever, you can easily just do an exercise right in the middle of it and help people. I mean, I did a shaking it out once, you know, and we just all were like children and shaking it out, and it actually really helps. So.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I mean, we'll just go
I think
to
that links in with the very last one, which is feedback
yeah.
equals the energy of the participants. So, you know, what you're noticing is what Jen is saying. And also when they're coming back from breakout rooms, that's your feedback as a facilitator. You're not going around the room like you usually do and hearing the buzz. So you have to get your buzz in a different way.
No, that's true. That's true. And that comes back to the trusting. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, we have, you know, it's quite a long video. We hope it's been useful for you. You are most welcome to ask us questions. If you just go to the last slide, Alison. So, you know, do drop us a line, give us any feedback. We will be putting this up on YouTube, so you can always put it in the comments. You know, I don't know how many of these sorts of things we'll put up, but you can subscribe to the channel, of course. And we really wish you sort of very successful virtual learning. It's been an absolutely joyful experience for us so far. We are thrilled in it. We are absolutely thrilled. It's much more than just relieved. We are loving it. So, you know, we wish you the best as well if you're watching this from any domain, any educational sort of end of things, any learning. And, you know, we would be delighted to share more in depth if you want to. So I think we will just say over and out, and may your resilience be with you.
Yeah. Bye, everybody. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much for watching.